The opposition in Scotland wants to investigate the assets of Donald Trump and his company. A partial success is achieved in court. Donald Trump has a very special bond with Scotland, the home of his mother, Mary Ann MacLeod. However, he's not really welcome there. In Scotland, Trump has 2 golf resorts that he has owned or opened in the past decade. In particular, the Trump International Golf Links golf course in Balmady, north of Aberdeen, is a source of controversy, the origins of which can be traced back to the acquisition of the property. The planning process ordered by the Scottish Government in 2008 was extremely controversial, as was the subsequent approval of the plans, also because opponents of the project feared the destruction of the famous sand dunes in northeast Scotland. And there were rebellious neighbors. Inside with the Mexico flags and the ugly wind farm in the North Sea hated by Trump, which destroys the view while golfing still give him a headache today. But it was not just about the golf course in Aberdeenshire, but also about the Turnberry Resort in Ayrshire. And according to the journalist Glenn Simpson, enormous amounts of capital flowed into these projects from unknown sources, as he said in 2016 before the Congress. Only on paper does the money, hundreds of millions of dollars, come from the Trump organization. The golf resorts themselves swallow a lot of money, but hardly bring in any. Now there's movement in Scottish politics too. The Greens, led by co-chair Patrick Harvie and other opposition MPs in Parliament in Edinburgh, filed a motion for a so-called McMafia order in early 2021, which the judiciary could use to force Trump to reveal the sources of his assets. If he refuses, his property could be confiscated. The unresolved asset orders were launched a few years ago to combat money laundering and organized crime. Patrick Harvie is nothing more than a national disgrace with his pathetic antics that only serve himself and his political agenda, said Eric Trump before the vote on the order in February. In addition, the Gulf resorts made an overwhelming contribution to the leisure and tourism industry, he said. The son of Donald Trump and vice president of the Trump Organization was initially happy because the government rejected the application. The then Justice Minister Hamza Yousaf stated that such a step would have to be left to the judiciary. The SNP politician does not want to defend Trump, but there should be no political interference in the execution of the judiciary. If he were to vote for the motion and thus for the McMafia order against Donald Trump, this would constitute, in his opinion, an abuse of power. The US NGO F.A.Z. appealed, and months later, on August 11th in 2021, Judge Lord Sanderson at the highest civil court in Scotland ruled that the government's decision not to investigate the Trump Organization would now be judicially reviewed. The exam had real prospects of success, said Lord Sanderson. The case is important and of public interest. The judge rejected protests from the government that F.A.Z. has submitted the petition too late. I am glad that we have taken a step further in clarifying while Trump's business affairs in Scotland have not been investigated, said a recent statement by Patrick Harvie. And he said, it should never have gotten to the point where a NGO was challenged, he added. We hope ministers agree that Trump's acquisition needs the transparency that only an unresolved property order can bring, said Nick Flynn, F.A.Z.'s legal director. Kay Springham, who represents the NGO in the court case, argued with the ongoing investigation against the Trump Organization in New York. They are proof that the business of the former president of the United States in Scotland should be examined more closely. Investigations into tax fraud against CFO Alan Weisselberg, whom the Trump Organization has meanwhile put in front of the door, or kicked him out, in other words, were also addressed. Weisselberg is still listed in a leadership position at the Turnberry Golf Resort. It is likely that the case will be heard in the Supreme Court in Scotland later this year. F.A.Z. hopes to overturn the Edinburgh government's decision and push through the McMafia order against the Trump Organization. This is not a criminal case against Donald Trump and his company, but an investigation into the accounts and their books, as we would say. Scotland's reputation is at stake, said Green MP Patrick Harvey, and it is now up to the ministers to defend them. The McMafia order against Trump would be a clear signal that doing business in Scotland must be transparent and accountable, regardless of who it is. And if you're wondering about the McMafia part, that is the word we use here for it. Mafia is what you might use the word mob for it. That's why I left it at McMafia. It was called here in all the media. But I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.